What's up everybody? Nate here. So the Great Resignation has pretty much shifted everything that we know about our labor force and our work culture. And now after tens of millions of people have voluntarily quit their jobs over the past year or so, many companies, experts, and investors are wondering, how much longer is this Great Resignation going to last for? And when is it going to end? Well, that's kind of a loaded question, because most experts are now saying that this Great Resignation and labor shortage is here to stay. And even though the Great Resignation hasn't been around that long, it is also starting to shift, with many workers now calling it not the Great Resignation anymore, they're referring to it as the Great Renegotiation, as the power of our class system is actually completely changing from the businesses and the companies and the leaders in those spaces all the way back to the workers. But is that a system that's going to thrive under our current economic conditions? Or is hating your job and hating where you work just the cool new thing to do? Well, today we're going to be addressing all of these and more. We're going to kind of look at what is going on in the jobs market right now and with the Great Resignation, what it's all going to mean for workers and companies alike, and how this is eventually going to shift our economy in the future. But before I get into all of that, do me a quick favor and hit, smash, or destroy that thumbs up button below and ring that notification bell too. Both of those two things are completely free and they help to show me that you like this video and that you want to see even more just like it. Thank you so much for doing that. Now let's talk all about the Great Resignation and our economy. So needless to say, the Great Resignation has caused some pretty serious problems for consumers and businesses alike. Ever since the pandemic really started, workers have been quitting in mass all throughout the country in a variety of different industries. And not just a few, we have tens of millions of people quitting all throughout the country right now. And that's meant a lot for just about everyone. From the business side, that means companies can no longer find reliable employees to fill positions. That's putting a massive strain on our supply chains because now businesses can't meet the demand of everyday Americans. Simply put, businesses can't find enough people to make all of their goods and services anymore. That means we're facing shortages in not just the labor market, but on our grocery shelves as well. And this has been a phenomenon that's pretty much been building for the past decade or so, with workers looking for any and all opportunities to take the power back from their employers. There are so many jobs out there where companies work employees to the bone. And then on top of that, they give those employees nothing extra, while all of the people on top, like your C-suite employees from the CEO to the CFO to all of your directors, are getting constant pay raises, and they're making so much more money than everyone on the bottom. I mean, we're talking multi-million-dollar bonuses, while all of the people who pretty much keep the lights on for most of their businesses are struggling. So that has been going on for a long time now. You have employers who are basically just exploiting the labor of all of their employees. And of course, the people on top don't always see it as exploiting labor, but for a lot of the workers, that's the way they feel. And you can go back and forth on whether or not they are. The fact of the matter is, the workers think they are, so they're quitting. Not only that though, but you have a labor movement in the United States that wants more pay. Now that's been going on for a long time too. That's not something that suddenly sprung up over the past couple of years. The Fight for 15 movement has been going on for nearly a decade. But this all kind of culminated with the pandemic. I think the reason for that is because a lot of workers were pushed even further than they were before, and the pay really wasn't there. All of these medical workers and retail workers were called heroes during the pandemic, and now that the pandemic is starting to go away, they're left with nothing except for their basic paycheck and a pat on the back. And they were kind of hoping they'd get a little bit more than that. So that has really accelerated things, because now that everything's starting to open back up and all of the time people spend in quarantine in 2020 and in 2021, people are now realizing that they don't want to work those low-level jobs anymore for pay that they can barely live off of. So they are quitting their jobs in mass. And that leads us to the first thing that we need to talk about. What are workers looking for right now? And this is a really complicated question because every single worker is going to be different. different. Everybody has different standards for work and the things that they're looking for in a particular job. But right now, the power dynamic is completely on the workers. They're able to negotiate with companies and get all of the things that they want because companies need them in order to survive. But for the most part, workers want to have better benefits. They want to have higher pay, and they don't want their labor to be exploited every single day. And when I say exploited, I basically mean here that companies oftentimes will give employees extra responsibilities, but not anything extra in terms of pay or benefits. So to give you a good example of this, a company will sometimes give a particular employee all of the power of being a manager, except for they won't give them the actual status of a manager or the pay increase. And then if that employee complains, the company will just take all of that power away and give it to someone else. And that's where the idea of competition comes in when we talk about the Great Resignation and our labor market. The competition between people in jobs is super crazy. And right now it's higher than ever because there's so many people who are looking for a job right now, and they all want different things. The other thing too is these employees want to have a livable wage, so they don't want to go to school for 4 or even 6 years and get their bachelor's or master's degree and then come into a work field that is hiring people at an entry-level wage of between $12 and $15 an hour. Nowadays, it's really hard for people to live off of that. Not only that, but employees want to start working from home. Don't want to have to come back to the office, especially since millions of workers in 2020 and in 2021 prove that they can do their job just fine from home. But now you have some companies who are forcing employees to go back to the office. And some of them are just quitting because they're looking for that work from home lifestyle. Many of them because there's so much savings when you work from home. And a lot of them have kids. They can save so much money by just watching their kids themselves while they work from home rather than paying a babysitter or sending their kid to childcare. In addition, you save the wear and tear on your car because for the majority of the United States, we don't have great transit. Maybe in your major cities like New York and Chicago, you'll be able to get around using public transit, but in your suburbs, it's pretty much non-existent. You need a car in order to get around. I mean, sure, you could Uber or take a Lyft, but the cost of that is gonna add up over time. So you've got the wear and tear on your car and also gas that you have to pay, or even if you use an electric car, you gotta charge it every single day. And finally, the commute. A lot of Americans spend hours commuting every single day, and most of them just don't want to do that anymore. There's no reason for it, and it takes away from the time that they could be spending with their family or doing the things that they actually want to do. And it's not like most employers are paying people to drive to and from work. I mean, some do in the form of gas money, but for the most part, that drive you take from work is all on you. And finally, millions of Americans are learning to put their passion before a paycheck. So they don't want just any old job anymore. They don't want something that's just going to pay them arbitrarily because they need to get paid. They actually want to make money doing something that they love to do. Those jobs are definitely out there, and it's not even about getting a traditional job anymore. People are deciding to go on YouTube and make money, or create their own business, or start a side hustle. All of that takes away from traditional jobs, which is also taking away from traditional businesses. Now let's jump to the flip side here and talk about what businesses are doing to try to bring people in and how likely it is people are going to get all of those things that they asked for. Well, like I said at the beginning of this video, businesses are struggling right now, and it's hurting their bottom line because they're not able to keep up with the demand of everyone buying things. Demand has been high for just about everything for a long time now. There was so much economic stimulus in 2020 and in 2021 that helped out millions of Americans, but there were so many people that ended up just saving a lot of that money, or they ended up investing it, and because asset prices and markets hit new record highs in 2020 and in 2021, they ended up making a killing. So now Americans have a ton more money, and they're going out and spending money, which is hurting businesses because they can't produce more. That hits profits, and it's going to eventually hurt the businesses and their identity because people are no longer going to want to shop at places where they can't find the things that they want to buy. But not only did people have a demand for just about everything because of stimulus, they ended up keeping a lot of this money and saving a ton of money because the federal government paused mandatory payments for a variety of different things like rent, mortgages, and federal student loan payments. Americans were saving more than we've seen in a long time, and now they are ending up quitting their job because they finally have an emergency savings in order to do so. Before, you couldn't just quit your job because you had no money to back yourself up. If you were going to quit your job, you either had to have something lined up or you were planning on putting everything on credit or going bankrupt. And for most Americans, that is a huge gamble. In 2022, though, it is not like that. Americans have a ton of money right now, and they're saving up and using it to protect themselves for months while they look for a new job. That gives them all the power they need, and it's starting to shift some businesses' ideas. So let's start with number one. Employees are starting to pay their workers a little bit more. In 2021, businesses and companies ended up giving their workers around a 4.5 to 4.6% raise on average. And in a normal year, that would be a huge raise. I mean, typically a raise for most workers is between 1 and maybe 3%, if you're lucky. Workers getting over a 4% raise, that's huge. Or at least it would have been huge if inflation wasn't so high. And that's pretty much the only reason that employers are giving out such big raises. You see, in January 2022, inflation hit a new over 40-year high of around 7.5%. That means the average price of everything in our economy went up by around 7.5%. So if something costs $1 today, a year from now, it'll cost you around $1.07 or $1.08. That's not a big deal if you're only spending $1 every so often, but the fact of the matter is most Americans are spending way more than $1 every single day. So if you're spending hundreds of dollars at the grocery store, well, now you're adding $10, $20 to $50 extra on your grocery bill just because of inflation. And the worst part is, it's not like those products have seriously improved. They are the same exact products, you just have to pay more because the buying power of your money has decreased. And that problem has only gotten worse over the past few months. The value of our money is going down because the price of everything is starting to go up. You need more money to buy all of the same things now. So when a company says we're giving you a 4% raise, well, that's great, except for it's still not meeting inflation. So you're still losing money. In fact, in 2021 alone, Americans lost around 2.4% of their real wages when compared to inflation. And that sucks, but lately businesses are not budging on their wages. They're starting to improve them a little bit, but they are not going up any higher. And the thing you need to know here is that businesses, while they provide incomes to people, they do not believe that it's their job to give their employees a livable wage. From the business perspective, they offer someone a job, and someone in the market or the labor force is willing to do that job at a particular price point. Now, people can say, well, you have to be able to live off of every single job. And if that was the case, businesses wouldn't have a ton of jobs, because that goes back to the whole negotiation thing. A business offers a job and someone is willing to do it. That's the only reason that we have certain positions in our society. If a company posted a particular position and nobody applied for it, well, that job wouldn't exist. For one, businesses wouldn't offer it, and two, nobody is willing to do it. That has been the entire anti-argument when you talk about raising the minimum wage. Because typically speaking, somebody out there in the world is going to be willing to do a job for less. And that's a pretty sad thing, but everybody's situation is different. Not everybody is looking for the exact same thing when it comes to a job, and that is important to remember here. So basically, if a company sets up a job for, say, $10 an hour, not enough to live off of in this economy, and you have people applying for that job, they're not necessarily looking to live off of that job, but they just want an extra means of income, well, then that is a job created, and that is a person who is employed, which is a person who's paying taxes. However, if you set the minimum wage at $15 an hour, well, the company cannot afford to have that position at $15 an hour. So you basically just erased a job that somebody was possibly willing to do. And like I said, this situation is tough, because to say every single job in the United States requires a livable wage, well, Well, that's an extremely tough question to answer, because what exactly is a livable wage? It's going to be different for every single person in the United States. Benefits have started to increase, but none of this is enough to draw in enough workers right now, because the fact of the matter is we have another problem to face here: the anti-work movement. The anti-work movement basically is here to challenge how work is done in the United States. People don't want to work for just a paycheck and for somebody. They don't want to make someone else money. They want to make money for them, and that's it. I think anti-work is kind of a bad name for it, but it's actually all about not having your labor exploited. And lately it's been growing, because you're now starting to see a lot more people starting businesses and going after side hustles. They don't want to work for your typical corporations anymore, because those jobs just don't mean anything to a lot of people. So now businesses are having an impossible time finding anyone. So what exactly is that leading to? Well, we are now coming up to the rise of automation, which could be a big problem in our labor force. You see, automation will basically eliminate so many jobs in the United States. Nowadays, with technology advancing faster and faster, you can get a robot to pretty much do anything. That could completely cripple the working class of the United States, meaning if you want a job 20 or 30 years from now, you have to be highly skilled or highly educated. The problem is our education system is not built to support that kind of lifestyle, which means we're either going to start pouring way more money into education all throughout the country, or we cannot have automation. The idea of automation is super interesting to me, because you have an entire workforce that is going to be more educated and highly skilled. And what that ultimately comes with is people who aren't working dead-end jobs anymore, or jobs that they don't want to have. There's a potential that they might be able to have a better choice of what they want to do. And key term, want to do. They're not just picking a job that pays them because it's convenient and it's there, which is part of the reason why a lot of people work jobs that don't pay well. It's the only thing available. You don't really have a choice in just getting any job that you want. But if that job just doesn't even exist because nobody is willing to do it, well, it still has to get done for a lot of these businesses and corporations. So they're just not going to have that job anymore. They're going to switch over to a robot who will do that job. That could lead to a workforce who is actually doing what they love to do and holding those higher positions. We won't have people being exploited nearly as much, or at least that's the hope. We could also have a workforce that gets higher paid. Now, this is all a very optimistic view here. The issue is, like I said before, our education system needs to change, because if it doesn't change and you are still relying on people to go out and get those higher skills and higher education themselves, well, millions of Americans just are not going to be able to do that. Many are going to be fortunate and go to good middle schools and good high schools throughout the country. Many are going to be able to pay for that higher education degree. But to say that that's an absolute requirement is going to be kind of difficult, especially since there's none of those low-paying jobs anymore. Where are they going to get the money to pay for everything? A lot of teenagers and young adults in their early 20s work while they go to school. If they can't work those traditional jobs anymore and make money, then how are they going to pay for school or a trade school or anything for that matter? The system is going to have to change, and we're going to have to figure out whether we have free school or whether school gets way less expensive. But you can't have both, because what you're going to create in that situation is an extreme disparity of wealth in our country, because you're going to have millions of Americans who cannot get a job, who cannot pay to get higher education or skills, completely wiping out the middle class. You're either going to have a higher class who is able to do all of those things and collects all of the money, and a lower class that can't get anywhere. Now, I will say automation has the potential to bring a ton of jobs to the United States, because somebody still has to create the robots and work on the robots and manage them and make sure everything is still functioning in factories and stores all throughout the country. And it has a potential for workers to not be put in such a position where their labor is being exploited. They're put in dangerous situations or places that they just don't want to work. It all just depends on capitalism, because if we allow companies and businesses to take all of the profit and all of the money and control over these robots and automation systems, well, then they're not going to give anything back to the labor force. The labor force actually can continue and thrive within automation. You just need the labor force, the everyday average Americans, running all of those robots. So you'll still have the same situation that you have before, but now people are running everything, and it's not just up to the leaders and the managers of companies. Naturally, there's going to be less jobs, but it shouldn't be that big of a jump between having nobody in our labor force and having all robots. There's a fine line there, and that could potentially be a solution, because you have workers working alongside the robots. It's not just one or the other, and they're doing different things. They're not just doing the exact same things anymore. That's a super interesting relationship, and it would kind of allow our education system to continue exactly the way it is. I'm not saying that it should do that, but that would kind of mean that we wouldn't have to change anything there. Everything could be exactly the same. People will still need to go to school and get higher education to get those skills to program the robots and automation in our society, but it will be a slow progression, and it'll need to happen in order to run all of these machines. That could end up working out for everybody. So when we talk about the future of our economy, that's kind of where we are headed. And to answer the question of this video, is this great resignation and labor shortage going to continue? Most likely, because businesses are not going to let up, because there's no reason for them to do that. The ideology between what a business and what a job is supposed to do in a particular individual's life is not changing anytime soon. Workers are going to get better benefits, but they're ultimately going to be replaced by machines at some point in our society. We either need to work alongside the machines, or we need to get better education in general. Pay is ultimately going to go up in the United States, but it's never going to meet inflation. Ever. It's too much of a cost for businesses. They're not going to take on that cost and lose their own profits just to pay people more. And in my opinion, this shift is only beginning. We're going to see a lot more of this over the next few years. So don't think that our supply chain issues and labor shortage is going anywhere anytime soon. But now I want to hear from you on this issue. What do you think about this whole great resignation and the future of our labor force and economy? Do you think that workers having more power than the corporations and businesses is good for our economy? Or do you think that it eventually will tank our entire economic system? Whatever your thoughts are, leave a comment below before you go. But that is it for today's business and financial news breakdown. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to stay up to date with all the top business and financial news from around the country, our team puts together a free daily newsletter, and you can subscribe to it by clicking the link in this corner right here. And if video is more your thing, I'm putting out videos 7 days a week, every week on this channel, breaking down all of the top business and financial news from around the country. And I've actually got a brand new update ready for you right here, so be sure to click on that before you go. That is it for me, everybody. Be kind out there, and I'll see you all in the next one.